Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. Welcome back to Glenn's Ebike Adventures. Today, um, we're not going to be going on an adventure because essentially, all the times we keep going on these adventures, our bike is getting dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. So, what we need to do really is we need to give this bike a clean. So, I'm going to show you the best way to clean an e-bike essentially. Um, so, um, let's get started. But let's just take a look at the bike and just to show you how much mud's on this bike at the moment. As you can see, that's pretty caked on there. It's probably about the dirtiest I've actually got. Bits of wildlife still stuck to it. So yeah, that's quite a mucky bike, to be honest. And we need to give this bad boy a bit of a clean. Right, so we've got a bucket of sort of, it's not hot, it's mildly warm, with a small drop of detergent in there. Only a small amount of detergent. You don't want to go overboard with that. Next thing, just a scrubbing washing brush, essentially, like you'd buy for your kitchen. We're going to be using that on our tyres, on our wheels, etc. So that can go in there. You'll need a soft cloth as well, and I would highly recommend getting a sponge. This one's got a um, abrasive pad on it, but we won't be using that on the bike at all, essentially. So we'll just be using the sponge side. Um, I keep meaning to get a bigger sponge because it does make life a little bit easier, but for today we're still using the small one anyway. And then once we've got all the bike clean, um, then we're going to be using our chain dock, which I'd highly recommend getting. And we'll show you how to apply that and how to use this essentially and get your chain all nice and clean again. Right, let's get cracking and get to it. Right, so first of all, what I'd say is get our cloth, get our damp cloth, and we're just gonna dampen everything up a little bit, and that will soften up a lot of this mud essentially, and a lot of it will just come off with the hot water. Don't worry too much. We're just gonna get the bike sort of soaking wet to start with. As you can see, that's falling off relatively easy. We don't need to worry about too much water around these parts essentially. Areas that we need to take care of, obviously the battery and the motor at the back there. When it does come to the battery, you can just go over that with a cloth, just a damp cloth, just go around the outside for now. I've got a lot of mud on the underside there, so we need to loosen that up with a bit of water as well. Now you will notice I'm going to take these out actually because it's getting very muddy, this water. We are just going to go over and get sort of the majority of the mud off the bike, essentially. I'd also advise that you do keep the battery on there, because then that sort of safeguards the battery connectors. Right, now we've given the bike a little bit of a wet over. Right, let's show you how essentially I clean the wheel. So okay, so how I go about cleaning the wheels, I just use, as I said, a kitchen brush, and just get that in the water, and then just run this over the wheel, making sure to do the sides. Now when you're running this over, you're going to get a little bit of water coming off, etc., going onto the frame. That's why we're doing the wheels like this now, because we don't want any of that splashing to go on the bike, obviously, once it's all nice and clean. So and essentially you just want to keep working your way around the tyre, getting any awkward bits off. One thing I will say, I do get asked a lot how I manage to keep my tyres in such good condition and looking so clean. Well, this is the method that I use, because even though these tyres are now 4 years old, once we're finished, these are going to look like brand new again. Well, almost. Right, let's carry on. Now this mud is quite dried on, so it's going to take a little bit longer than to clean this. Had you cleaned the bike when you got home, it would be a much easier affair. Right, so that's the front wheel pretty much all done. You can then go over the inside of the wheel. Again, be careful of your spokes, but we just want to get our inside rims nice and wet, essentially. And all of that muck should come off a little bit easier once it's had a little bit of a soak. Right, I don't want to do too much because this water's getting quite mucky now. So at this stage, I'm just going to go and do the back wheel as well. So we'll get the back wheel done, and then we'll move on to our next stage. Again, same principle. Just get the tyre nice and wet with the brush. You can get off the majority of this mud because we're going to change the water, essentially. Right, don't worry too much about water dripping onto the motor there. The motor has an IP rating of 65, which it's all good for splash damage and rain, etc. So a little bit of water just falling onto there is not going to affect it. Also, while you're doing this, you may as well just have a quick go over the spokes. Try not to be too rough over these because you don't want to snap them. They are quite strong, but just try and do it sort of relatively, you don't want to apply too much force on there, essentially. Right. Yeah, and then as I said, just go over the inside again. Of your wheel rim. Yeah, this water is quite mucky at the moment, and in some ways I think I'm putting back a little bit of mud back onto the bike. Now you might think, or you might be a little bit mistaken, that this bike already looks quite clean, but I can assure you, once it's dried, it will definitely look still dirty. So right, I think that's going to do for now. You can also just go over your motor, just gently again. We don't want to soak the derailleur and the rear cassette. But a little bit of water on there is not going to hurt. Right, so I think that's that for now. We're going to go and fill our bucket up again with some fresh water, and we'll go over it and for the second stage. Right, so we've now got our second bucket of lukewarm water with a small amount of detergent in it. And now we're going to finish off the tyres, but we're going to do the tyres first. essentially, because as I said, as I'm doing this with the brush, you're going to get splashes that are going to go all over the frame essentially. Right, so just go over the wheel, the tyre. Making sure, do the sides again. Now the reason I use that a little bit of detergent, also it does help to break up the mud or any dirt on the tyre, but also there's a clear line of pretty much where I started. So as I bring the wheel round, you can kind of see where I've been, how far I've got to, etc. And it's more, well, it does aid in cleaning your tyre, but it also aids as a visual aid as well. Now if you just sort of spend 2 or 3 minutes on each wheel, and that should be enough to get your tyre looking almost like the day it came out of the box. Right, so we've just almost come round to a complete rotation. You know, as you can, I don't know if you can see, but this obviously splashes all over here when you're using the brush. That's why we do the tyres first. Right. Again, you can just go over the inside of your wheel rim. Get some nice fresh water on there with some detergent. As I said, a small amount of detergent is only needed. You don't want to be putting too much in there. And if we just leave the inside of the rim and the tyres a little bit more soaked with water and detergent, that'll help break up any last sort of little bits on there, which will make it easier, or should all be off, to be honest, by the time we're comes to giving the bike a little bit of a rinse. Right, we've come full circle with the inner tube, so we're going to move on now to the front wheel. So let's get that done. Same thing on the front wheel. Another thing you can also do, I mean, you could sort of move something that's a visual sign. So if you know, if your soap bubbles do sort of run down, they will obviously go round. So you could use something like marking on the wheel as your start position. Again, when you're doing these spokes, don't apply a lot of pressure. Only needs a light touch. Right, so pretty much round for a full rotation of that wheel now. And just lastly, last go over your spokes and the wheel rim itself on the inside. Right, that's pretty much the wheels done, apart from a rinse off. Now, what I generally do at this point, there are still some soap suds in here, but I just pour this gently onto the wheel and let the water take most of the soap suds off the wheel. You don't need to soak the bike, and again we'll do the same on the back. Obviously, because there's a hub motor on there, again we don't want to soak this wheel, just want to give it a nice bit of water. Right, those wheels are starting to look a little bit cleaner. Right, so the next step, we're going to go over the bike with our sponge and our clean cloth, essentially, and just get those last little bits of mud off or anything, and then we can move on to the chain. Right, starting at the top, you can go over all your wires. As far as the display goes, again, you don't want to be chucking loads of water over this. This is probably, like, the display is probably like the weakest water rating on the bike, essentially. That's generally down to the fact that they generally have holes in them to keep air circulating and keep the or keep the unit cool. So we don't want it all dripping. So wring out your cloth so it's just a damp, and then you can go over that without a problem. And then it's just a case of systematically going around your bike. Always work from the top down, because any dirt that you remove from the top is probably going to drip down. For anyone wondering why I'm wearing a big coat, it's about 1 degrees here at the moment in the UK, so it's pretty cold right now. When you're doing your brakes, essentially, don't be touching them with your hand at all, and you want to make sure that that cloth is clean. You don't want any debris essentially falling on your brake discs. Now I will admit this bike has did get quite dirty, but then I don't have any fenders. Well, I do have fenders, but I just prefer the look of the bike without fenders, essentially. Right, now just the rear half of the bike. Now I have been waiting most of the day for the rain to subside, which unfortunately it didn't do, hence why we won't be going out adventuring today. I mean, it's only 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I don't know if you can see this, but light seems to be evading us rather rapidly already here in the UK. Our days are really quite short at this time of the year. Let's come on this side. Just going to go over the last sort of few bits. Still got a tiny amount of mud on that I missed. That's primarily the pedals, I'll be honest. And then again for our motor, we can just do the inside and run a cloth over that. Again, you don't want to be soaking this motor. It does have an IP rating of 65, as I said, but we still want to, you know, be cautious. Right, I think we're pretty much all we're done. And my next point would be to get another bucket of water, which I'm going to do, and we'll give this bike a little bit of a rinse over. Right, so essentially we are kind of running out of daylight now. So I need to get this bike indoors. So what we're going to do, we'll get this bike just rinsed off. Any final bits, we'll just get that rinsed off, and then tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll get the chain cleaned tomorrow when there's a bit more daylight. So we'll pick this video up again tomorrow and do that. Right, we just want our sponge. Again, not the abrasive side, we're only going to use the sponge side. So just to get everything a little bit of a rinse off. Again, go from top to bottom, because if you do loosen any further dirt, then that's going to drop onto the surface below it. And if we work from top to bottom, that means that everything should we should get rid of everything essentially. Again, when you're doing your electronics, sponge doesn't want to be soaking wet. Just give it a little bit of a, you know, a squeeze out before you start cleaning your electrics, essentially. Right, well, I think we're pretty much done. Now, one thing I do, again, I've got my nice clean water. I'm just going to drip it over my tyres. Again, I don't want to be excessive, but a nice gentle splash of water, which will bring any old loose bits down. And we'll do the front wheel as well. One thing I did want to point out, obviously we're going to be taking this bike indoors, so what I would do, essentially, turn your chain backwards, and I'd run it sort of relatively fast. This will get any sort of water droplets essentially off your chain. It's probably better to have it on a higher gear as well, so the tension on there's a little bit better. Let's do that. Right. That's a bit better. Now, probably hasn't, the camera won't be able to pick this up, probably, but there's lots of little splashes here, which is come off the chain. So, I kept a small amount of water back, and we'll just get over that and get rid. Right. Another thing I'd sort of suggest doing is going over the bike in sort of key areas, around the motor, around the battery, just with a dry cloth. You don't need to be absolutely 100% perfect, but just go over a dry cloth around the motor and the battery area, and probably the control, the screen display as well. Right, let's take this bad boy back in. Right, so we've come in today. It's still really bad weather outdoors. That's what we're going to be using. We're going to be using this chain clean to clean our bike. Now, it will tell you to use this with the solution that's in there, but what I generally tend to find is that essentially with these, you put the chain through here, you squeeze the handle, and then you, once you've got that in place, you turn the chain, essentially. Right, so what I would suggest is that you pop the chain in there to start with, close it, and just give it a bit of a run through dry. That will help sort of take off any of the loose bits. Right, so once we've done that, I don't know if you can see in the bottom there, there's some loose bits of dirt and muck that's essentially already come off of our chain. Right, so we'll pop this back in here. And I'll give this a couple of, no, that's not very good, that's already come off. All right. Right, give it a little bit of a squirt. And we just keep running it through. Right, let's pop that out there. And then you should see there's a lot of yucky black solution in the bottom there, which we can get rid of. That's basically come off of our chain. We leave this to dry in this state, and then afterwards, once it's dry, we can come back and lubricate the chain properly. Well, I'm not sure how well this is going to show up because we've kind of run out of daylight. But as you can see, the bike is all nice and clean, essentially. And yeah, look at these tyres. They're not grey. They return to black.